This genius mage was destroyed by his own brother. After finishing the chapter, the reader could only think one thing. It was pathetic, a monster talent capable of changing the entire world, reduced to a broken shell because of jealousy, and in the end, killed by his own family. Even after his death, every crime was pinned onto him. His name was cursed by the entire empire, while the real villain lived peacefully at the top. Not a single member of his family cried for him. That alone said everything. The reader tried to brush it off. After all, it was only a side character story. But the frustration refused to disappear. How could someone ruin their own little brother's life just for power? Still emotionally drained from the revenge arc, the reader closed the book and set a 10-minute alarm. He only wanted a short nap to clear his head before reading the next chapter. But when he opened his eyes again, everything was dark, completely dark. At first, he thought he overslept, but something felt wrong immediately. He couldn't see anything, not even his own hands. Panic slowly crept in as he touched the ground beneath him. Stone, cold, rough stone. His bed was gone. Then, clank, a metallic sound echoed through the darkness. The moment he moved his leg, chains rattled around his ankle. His blood instantly ran cold. Someone had chained him up. He forced himself to stay calm. No screaming, no panicking. First, understand the situation. The chains weren't tight enough to cut circulation, which meant whoever locked him up wanted him alive, at least for now. Then suddenly, voices. A line of light appeared in the darkness before the door slowly opened. The sudden brightness burned his eyes, and a gentle voice echoed through the room. "How are you feeling?" A man stepped inside. The reader immediately tried to ask for help, but the words that came out of his mouth weren't his own. Brother. His mind froze. Brother? He didn't have a brother. But before he could process it, his body continued speaking on its own. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I won't do it again." Fear, desperation, terror. Those emotions weren't his. It felt like someone else's memories were leaking directly into his mind. Then the man frowned slightly. Luca. The moment he heard that name, everything clicked. Luca, the side character from the novel. The same genius mage destroyed by his older brother. The same boy poisoned for years under the excuse of medicine. The same boy who eventually died before ever reaching adulthood. A horrible realization crashed into his mind. He wasn't looking at a kidnapping situation anymore. He had reincarnated inside the novel, and worst of all, he became the doomed side character himself. His breathing turned uneven as the man continued talking softly. Apparently, Luca's condition had worsened recently. The medicine wasn't working anymore, so they increased the dosage. The reader almost laughed from disbelief. Medicine? There was no illness. Luca was perfectly healthy. The so-called medicine was actually poison designed to destroy his magic talent. In this world, magical power determined inheritance. The strongest mage became the head of the family, and Luca's older brother could never accept that reality, because Luca was a true monster. While ordinary children awakened magic around 6 years old, Luca was already using advanced magic at age 3. Everyone knew he would become the greatest mage in the family's history, so his brother decided to erase him before that could happen. Little by little, bottle after bottle, year after year, he destroyed Luca's body using poison while pretending to save him. And now, the brother held a new crystal bottle directly in front of Luca's face. Black liquid swirled inside with an eerie blue glow. A stronger dose, enough to possibly kill him immediately. One of the servants panicked. "Sir, young master!" But the brother silenced him instantly. Soon everyone left the room. Only the two of them remained inside the underground prison. Then the older brother smiled warmly. "You won't die, trust me. This is all for your own good." The reader's fingernails dug into his palms. This monster truly believed Luca's life meant nothing. Fear exploded through his body like a collapsing dam. His breathing became unstable, his vision blurred, and then a bright white light suddenly appeared before his eyes. Ding! Our guy wakes up no longer in his own world, but in the body of Lucas Ascanian, the official candidate for the title of the most unfortunate victim of an aristocratic family. And as if that wasn't enough, a system window with a survival quest pops up in front of my eyes. The situation is disgusting, to put it mildly. In front of him is a bottle of poison, and next to him stands his brother, the same guy who smiles like a saint but behaves like a demon with a degree in psychology. He calmly explains that Luca should drink the poison again to check the symptoms. That is, the brother literally says, "Come on, let's make sure you don't die too quickly." The hero quickly realizes that there are only two options: drink and maybe survive, or give up and die for sure. He chooses the poison, and while the insides are burning as if a bonfire has been lit in the stomach, the system suddenly gives out. Congratulations, the offer has been fulfilled. This is a real solo leveling moment. Waking up later, Luca discovers that the poison did not kill him, and the system now shows a full-fledged status window. And then the comedy of pain begins. The title is The Biggest Fool of the Empire, health is in the red, mental strength is in the red, luck is in the red. Bro literally starts the game with a debuff on existence. But the main blow is the Dawn 777 feature. The system reports that there are 777 days left before his death, and the chance of changing his fate is a measly 0.2%. That is, the world officially considers him almost doomed. It is here that the hero ceases to be a victim. Instead of panicking, he begins to think like a strategist. He writes down the plot of the novel, analyzes the connections of the characters, and decides that he needs strength, allies, and caution. He's not going to go directly to the main character. It's too risky. Instead, he chooses the person who will make the hero an emperor in the future. The system approves the choice and increases the probability of survival by another 3%. Our guy just turned a death sentence into a chess game. Our guy is finally starting to build his survival plan, and the first name he highlights in his notebook is Leonard Wittelsbach. And no, this is not just another random statistician. It is this man who will play a huge role in the victory of the main character in the future, and will be closely connected with the story of Lucas himself. Moreover, it is he who will later create a core booster from the very poison that Brother slowly uses to kill our hero. Bro has literally found a potential goldmine. However, to get to the right ingredients and knowledge, he will first have to establish contacts at school. And there's a little problem with that. The whole country considers him the local equivalent of the dark cultist. When Luca leaves the room and starts exploring the mansion, a real miracle happens. All conversations are instantly silenced. The servants fall silent as quickly as if someone has pressed the pause button. And then our guy finally understands the scale of the disaster. It turns out that his brother has been conducting one of the nastiest social experiments in history for 10 years in a row. He gradually spread rumors that Luca was connected to the Pleroma, an insane cult that likes to drink blood, steal magic power, and perform resurrections with inferior quality to Chinese assembly. That's not even the scariest part. This psycho was also playing the role of a caring brother. That is, during the day he defends Luke in front of people, and at night he creates new rumors against him. Bro literally staged a 10-year information war against his own younger brother, and the worst part is that everyone believed it. My father believed me, the servants believed him, the whole empire believed it, even Luca himself believed it. But our hero looks at the situation quite differently. Instead of depression, he thinks, so what? The more they avoid him, the less they will interfere. The logic is ironclad. After wandering for a long time, he gets to the library, where the system suddenly throws up a new quest. Now he is being offered to turn knowledge into a real skill, and that's where the real hamster student mode begins. Luca starts sorting through the books one by one. Combat spells, it's too easy. The story, uselessly. Forbidden arts, thank you of course, but when you're already considered a blood cultist, reading a cursing manual isn't the best idea. As a result, the eye falls on a book about divine power, and then our guy realizes that he has hit the jackpot. Divine power allows you to use special techniques, including mind control. Of course, he won't be able to control his brother yet. This monster is too strong, but forcing bystanders to keep their mouths shut, it already sounds much more interesting. In short, the less information will flow to the brother, the more freedom our hero will get. That's why he sits in the library all night and literally absorbs the book with his eyes. And the system is like this. Ding. Congratulate. The divine power attribute has been obtained. Our guy just discovered a new character class. The next day, the road to the academy begins, and here Luca gets another painful lesson about his reputation. It turns out that the journey does not take 3 days, but only 1. Why? Because the coat of arms of the Askenian family is on the carriage. All checkpoints simply wave their hands and let the crew pass on. And then the real circus begins. As soon as the carriage reaches the capital, the rest of the carriages begin to literally part to the sides. Children close the windows, people are turning onto other roads. Someone even screams in fear. It's only after a couple of seconds that Lucas realizes the reason. They are not making way for the Askenian family. They make way for him, because according to others, there is a potential maniac cultist sitting inside the carriage right now, who can start a resurrection ritual in the middle of the street at any moment. Realizing this, our guy just starts laughing, not because it's fun, but because the level of absurdity has already broken through the ceiling. But instead of getting upset, he makes a mental note. Someday he will switch places with his brother, and then he will see how this holy actor will feel in the place of the universal outcast. On the way, the system issues a notification again. It turns out that the study of divine power counted as part of the quest. The statistics have increased slightly, literally by a fraction of a percent, so little that an ordinary person wouldn't even notice the difference. But for Lucas, every bit of strength is important right now. Finally, the carriage arrives at the academy, and then our hero notices a new problem: his hair. Over the years of isolation, they have turned into some kind of nest of wax, strands, and life mistakes. If he's going to make allies, then first he needs to at least stop looking like the main suspect in a child abduction case. All that remains is to find a hairdresser. However, there is a problem. Everyone around him still shies away from him like a walking plague. But our guy isn't going to live like old Luke anymore. Therefore, when he notices a student who is trying to escape unnoticed into an alley, he immediately catches up with him and grabs his shoulder. The poor guy almost gets a heart attack, and Lucas smiles the friendliest smile he can and says, "I'm sorry, I need to ask you something," and judging by the student's reaction, he is already mentally writing a will.
Our guy is finally completing his first big quest. Ding! The system confirms the completion of the task. Chapter 1 is completed. The next chapter opens. And if earlier Luca was just trying not to die, now a full-fledged survival game begins. The first thing he does is look in the mirror after getting a haircut, and then an unexpected discovery occurs. It turns out that under a layer of hair, wax, depression, and years of gaslighting, there was a completely normal guy hiding. Not a handsome man of the level of the main character of romantic manhwa, of course. But he's no longer the #1 suspect in the infant sacrifice case. Our guy literally got an appearance buff through a barbershop. But poor Melvin, who helped him find the salon, still behaves as if he were being led to execution. Every question Lucas asks causes him to have a new panic attack. When Luca asks his name, he reacts as if he's about to be interrogated using forbidden magic. At some point, our hero even begins to feel like a school bully. However, not for long, because watching Melvin try to stay as far away as possible is still a bit funny. After reaching the dorm, Luca finally unpacks his things: books, clothes, educational supplies, and a box of medicine. That's the medicine. That is, by poison. Next to it is a letter from my beloved brother, and that's where the real hypocrisy masterclass begins. The letter literally consists of, "I was so worried about you. I'm so sorry. I almost killed you by accident. Take care of your health. May God protect you. With love, your brother." Bro has been poisoning a man for 10 years in a row and then writes a postcard like a caring mom. Even the film industry has not seen such a level of acting. But one line catches Lucas especially strongly. "I'm sure you know what needs to be prioritized." Yes, he knows now. That's why the medicine box is locked up. Not because he's going to keep drinking them, but because it's future evidence against my brother. After that, our guy decides to check the state of his core. The effect of the poison has almost subsided. Theoretically, magic should work. He raises his hand. Red mana begins to gather around the fingers, and bang! It's like being stabbed in the chest with a red-hot knife. My knees are buckling. It's getting hard to breathe. But he understood the main thing. Magic still exists. The poison did not destroy him completely, so the plan is working. It remains to wait for the weekend, when the effect of the poison will finally subside, and then it will be possible to proceed to the next stage. Exactly, to Leo. The next day, Luca goes to the academy, and immediately notices the strangeness. No one is avoiding him. No one is running away. No one crosses themselves at his appearance. For a second, it seems like a miracle has happened, and then one student notices his face, and literally takes off like an Olympic sprinter, and everything becomes clear. They just didn't recognize him after the haircut. It turns out that the old hairstyle was so terrible that it was a separate identification mark. Cruelly. On the way, Luca remembers the main problem: Leonard Wittelsbach, the guy he wants to make an ally of, and the guy who can't stand him. And the reasons are quite funny. Once upon a time, Leo admired Luca. He saw his talent. I saw the potential. But then the rumors started. The strangeness began. Luca began to shut down. He stopped showing his abilities. And as a result, in Leo's eyes, he turned into a man who simply threw his talent in the trash. Therefore, Leo's attitude now looks something like this. You disappoint me. Not hate, not fear, just a huge disappointment. And this can already be fixed. When Luca enters the classroom, the noise immediately subsides. 100 eyes immediately turn in his direction. That's when the voice is heard. Look at that. Have you decided to live longer? Our guy doesn't even raise his head right away. because he knows the owner of that voice perfectly well. Leo, the golden boy of the academy, excellent student, a favorite of the teachers, genius, pretty boy, the owner of maximum social skills. In short, a character that authors usually make the main character. And it is his system that needs to be turned into an ally. At this point, a new window appears. Make Leonard Whittlespark your ally. Period of execution, 168 hours. Reward, survival. Penalty for failure, death. This is a real quest from a psychopath. Our guy was literally given a week to make friends with a man who hates him. The first lesson begins. The history of magic. And the professor turns out to be a real raid boss of the conversational genre, he says. And he says. And he says. An hour passes. Half the class is already asleep. The other half is in a near-death state. Even the walls of the auditorium look tired. Finally, the professor decides to enliven the audience with a question. At which meeting was it decided to make it mandatory for magicians to participate in the annual Eucharist? Silence. Dead. Absolutely. No one knows the answer. The professor is already beginning to suffer from his own existence. And then Luke remembers the book about divine power. The one I've been cramming all the way. He knows the answer, but there is a risk. Any unusual activity can attract your brother's attention. On the other hand, his brother himself recently advised him to improve his grades. It turns out to be a funny situation. If you find fault, there will be nothing to find fault with. Our guy makes a decision. He raises his head, and he speaks calmly. The second cathedral of Lighterum. The class freezes instantly. All. Everything at all. The professor looks as if he has just seen a talking dragon, and the professor himself just can't believe it for a few seconds, because the man everyone thought was a useless idiot had just answered a question that no one else could answer. But Lucas is only interested in one person. Leo. He looks at him, and for the first time, he doesn't see contempt. Not a joke. Not an annoyance. And a surprise. A real surprise. And then the system happily issues a new message. Ding. A special reward. Hint. Check the probability of survival. And apparently, our guy just took the first real step towards turning his whole life around. After answering the lesson, Luca immediately checks the system. And indeed, the probability of survival has increased. Not by 10%, not by 5, not even for 1, by only 0.1%. But for a person who started with almost zero chances, it already looks like a victory. Our guy finally gets confirmation. He's moving in the right direction. So, it's time to stop playing the role of a downtrodden ghost, because there is one problem. To destroy your brother's reputation and rise to the top yourself, you can't always remain a local meme of the empire. Sooner or later, my brother will notice the changes. He will set up an observer, he'll come in person, or he'll come up with some other dirty trick. Therefore, there is no time to build up. The first days of study are quiet. Luca barely sticks his head out. Instead, he spends all his free time in the library continuing to study divine power. While the others are relaxing on the weekend, our guy is literally farming the experience. And finally, Monday comes. The first full-fledged practical lesson on magic. And this is dangerous territory, because it's getting harder to hide your changes. The professor leads the students to the training ground, and the magic demonstration begins. One student, second, third, fourth, spells fly in all directions. And then Luca notices something interesting. Leo. Before that, he seemed like just a smart and popular guy. But now it's becoming obvious. This guy is a real monster. When it's his turn, he literally stands out from the rest of the course. Not a statistician's level. Not the level of a talented student. This is already material for the main character's team. Our guy looks at it and mentally understands. Yeah, not everyone becomes a friend of the protagonist for nothing. Meanwhile, the traditional school ritual begins in another part of the playground, discussing Lucas behind his back. As soon as he changes his appearance, half of the academy starts building conspiracy theories. One says, this is the first time he looks like a human being at all. The other one responds, I just saw his face. The third one starts to worry at all. What if he just decided to start drinking blood more professionally? Bro literally cut his hair. But the locals already suspect preparations for world domination. Rumors about the pleroma are so ingrained in people's brains that any change causes them to panic. And the worst part is that there are those who really believe in it. One of the students almost breaks down. Why are you all so calm? But it is at this moment that Leo intervenes, and he says a phrase that immediately shows his attitude towards Lucas. A change of appearance does not change the essence. Hard, very tough. For the rest, it's just another taunt. But in reality, the situation is more complicated, because there is a real civil war going on inside Leo. He hates the current Lucas, but he can't forget the boy he saw 10 years ago. The kid with the incredible magic. Magic, which impressed him so much that it literally forced him to devote his life to the magical art. And that's why Leo gets madder than the others, because he saw real talent. And then I watched as this talent turned into ruins. In his eyes, Luca looks like a man who voluntarily threw the treasure in the trash, and it annoys him more than any rumors. But after the class meeting, a new problem appears. Lucas has changed, and too much. The gait has changed, the look has changed, the manner of speaking has changed. It was as if he had become a different person, and the little hope that Leo has been trying to crush for years is beginning to stir again. And suddenly, does that bow still exist? What if he comes back? Leo himself tries to push these thoughts away, but it turns out badly. And finally, the moment of truth comes. The practical exam continues. One student after another demonstrates the spells. Everyone is waiting. They're counting. They whisper to each other. When is Lucas's turn? Because no one believes that he is capable of using magic. Nobody at all. Some are sure that he will just embarrass himself. Others believe that he will stand in silence again. Still others are waiting for a circus performance. Even Leo tries to convince himself that nothing will change, that Luca wouldn't show anything again, that there is no hope. And then the professor announces, next one, Lucas Ascanian. It gets quiet on the playground. Our guy calmly steps forward. No nerves. Don't panic. Without trembling hands, he raises his wand, and crackle, a red light flashes on the tip of the wand. Just for a moment. For a split second. But it's enough. The whole playground explodes. What? Did he use magic? Did you see that? This can't be happening. The students are literally losing their minds. For any normal magician, it's not even a spell. It's a spark, the usual trick. But for Lucas, it's like raising a dead man. Because a man who couldn't use magic for years, I just used it. And it's not the class that's most shocked. And Leo, he rises abruptly from his seat. The eyes widen. My heart starts pounding. Because for the first time in many years, he felt that same feeling again. That's the memory. That's the moment from childhood. When Lucas's magic made him fall in love with magical art. For a second, it seems to him that the hope was not in vain. That Luke is really coming back. But the next moment, our guy lowers his wand. He flinches slightly from the pain, and he doesn't do anything else. And the whole playground remains staring at him, as if it had just seen a ghost.
Our guy continues to play a very dangerous game. In a practical lesson, he finally shows magic. More accurately, it shows such a pathetic spark that most students immediately lose interest. But there is one problem, Leo. And this guy couldn't be fooled. As soon as Lucas released mana, Leo immediately realized the truth. This was no incompetent man standing in front of him, not a cripple, not the guy with the destroyed core, and a man who deliberately hides his strength. Moreover, he hides it so brazenly that it already looks like a personal insult. When Lucas tells the professor that he feels unwell and wants to leave, Leo almost explodes on the spot, because for him it looks something like this. Bro, I've been working for magic all my life, and you were born a genius? And now you're pretending to be disabled for fun? Leo can't forgive that. Our guy looks at his reaction on purpose and barely holds back a smile. Because that's exactly what he wanted. If the others must see Lucas's weakness, then Leo needs to see his potential. And judging by the look of the golden boy of the academy, the bait was swallowed along with the hook. After the lessons, the fun begins. Luca checks the liking indicators. And they've gotten worse. From -8 to -9. Our guy looks at it and is happy. Yes, rejoices. Because for an ordinary person, that's -1 hate point. And for him, it's a confirmation that Leo is no longer indifferent. He's hooked. He's thinking. He's angry. He can't get Lucas out of his head. So the plan is working. Bro literally uses psychology instead of magic. Meanwhile, Leo is going through one of the hardest evenings of his life. He sits in the room and can't stop thinking. Because today I saw that very magic. The one that changed his fate 10 years ago. The magic of the boy he had once admired. And now his whole worldview is starting to come apart at the seams. If Luca is able to use magic, then why haven't you done anything for so many years? If he's that talented, why did you let everyone think you were useless? If it has changed, what's going on? There are more questions every minute. And in the end, Leo comes to the only conclusion. He must find out the truth, personally. The following days pass exactly as Lucas expected. The rest of the students are already forgetting about his performance. Big deal. He used a weak spell. The sensation lasted about as long as the discount in the store. But Leo keeps watching, and more carefully. Our guy is deliberately adding fuel to the fire. In the following practices, he does even less. Sometimes he just collects mana. Sometimes he doesn't even let her out. He raises his wand. Is worth watching. He lowers it. Leo is now in the state of a person who has shown the solution to a riddle and closes the last page every time. He's literally bursting with curiosity and anger. And finally, patience is running out. After another class, a shadow looms over Lucas. Our guy raises his head. Leo is standing in front of him. He looks like he's ready to start a war. I need to talk to you. There is a contact. Lucas mentally ticks the box. Everything is going according to the script. Leo makes an appointment. Midnight. The training ground. And if Luke doesn't come voluntarily, he'll be dragged in by force. What a cute way to invite a person to a conversation. True friendship begins that way. Night falls. Lucas leaves the dorm and goes to the training grounds. And here it turns out a very important thing. Leo is so confident in himself that he hasn't even explained exactly where to look for him. Bro just said come over, and he expected that everyone else would automatically know the location of his personal lair. The main character's level can be felt from a kilometer away. Therefore, Lucas stands quietly in the middle of the playground and waits, right up to the moment when they grab him by the scruff of the neck. Leo found himself. Very convenient. Then the verbal duel begins. Leo immediately goes on the attack. He accuses Lucas of lying, in a game of magic, bullying my studies, disrespecting the school. In short, he throws out everything that has accumulated over the past few days. But then the unexpected happens. Lucas doesn't make excuses. He doesn't back down. He doesn't try to change the subject. He starts arguing, calmly, cold, logically, and so confidently that Leo is gradually losing the initiative. When he declares, the school belongs to the students, Lucas immediately responds, then who are the teachers? When Leo criticizes the professor, our guy reminds us to talk to him directly first. When Leo is outraged by his behavior, Lucas asks, what's it got to do with you anyway? Every answer hits the target exactly. And gradually Leo begins to realize an unpleasant thing. This was no longer the same terrified Luca, not the one at all. At some point our guy pretends that he's going to leave. That's when what he's been waiting for from the beginning happens. Leo takes out his wand. The air instantly becomes heavier. The voice grows cold, and his eyes are literally sparkling. Get out your wand. That's it. Finally. Leo offers a deal. If Lucas wins, he will shut his mouth and stop interfering. If Leo wins, Lucas will leave the academy. In other words, this guy just challenged our guy to a duel, and he did it absolutely voluntarily. Lucas stares at him for a few seconds, and then he smiles slowly. Because he organized this whole performance, Leo thinks he's got him cornered, but in fact, he walked into a trap set by himself. And Lucas's response turns out to be as calm as possible. Of course not. Bro just took the fight. So the next chapter promises to be a real clash between two stubborn monsters. Our guy finally gets what he put on this whole show for. The duel begins. And it starts as Leonov style as possible. No warnings. Without a countdown. Without beautiful speeches. Lucas just adjusts the grip of his wand. And the next second, the spell is already flying in his face. Boom. A piece of the wall of the training hall is flying apart. Our guy manages to dodge literally at the last moment. And then an unpleasant truth dawns on him. Leo is a monster. Not in terms of talent. Conversely, he reached this level solely through training. While Luca had been slowly dying in the basement for 10 years, this guy had been rocking like a fanatic for 10 years. And the result is now trying to blow his head off. Then the real beating begins. Leo doesn't even hide his intention. He literally drives Lucas all over the playground. The spells fly one after the other. The barriers are cracking. The floor collapses. The air vibrates with magic. And our guy only does one thing. He survives. He doesn't answer. Does not counterattack. Doesn't show real strength. He's just defending himself. And that's what Leo is starting to hate the most. Because he understands perfectly well. Lucas is hiding something. And on purpose. Are you just going to run away? Did you come out here just to waste my time? Our guy just smiles. And that makes Leo even angrier. Because the longer the fight lasts, the more obvious it becomes. Lucas doesn't lose. He's waiting for something. And finally the right moment comes. Leo decides to end the performance. The wand is lowered. The earth trembles. Magical vines are bursting out from all sides. They grab Lucas's sleeve. They reach for the wand. They block the escape routes. And at the same time, the final attack appears. A real finishing blow. A typical moment from Manhwa, where the hero usually says, "Damn it, I lost. But not today." Because that's exactly what Luca wanted. Our guy rips his hand out of the grip of the vines. The thorns dig into the skin. Blood is coming out on the sleeve. The magical flow is being disrupted. But it's too late. The spell is activated. Boom. The two attacks collide. The training hall literally explodes from the shockwave. The dust rises to the ceiling. The floor is covered with cracks. Visibility disappears. And Luca is already preparing for a new attack. Because Leo is not the type to stop. But nothing happens. Strange. It's very strange. When the dust clears, the cause becomes visible. Leo is lying on the floor, with blood on his forehead. And then our guy understands. This psycho didn't dodge on purpose. He deliberately took the blow, voluntarily, with his own face, to make sure, to feel it, to check it out. Bro literally got the opportunity to dodge and said, "No, I'd rather catch it with my forehead." A real fan of magic, without treatment, without registration. Luca tries to help him up, but the situation is only getting worse. Because Leo starts laughing. Not nervous, not hysterical, but really happy. Like a man who had been searching for a treasure for 10 years and finally found it. That's it. What? That's what I've been waiting for. And then the revelation begins. It turns out that 10 years ago, it was Lucas's magic that inspired Leo to dedicate his life to magic. All these years, he remembered that moment. I remembered that power. I remembered that boy. And now he finally saw her again. In fact, Our guy has now accidentally fulfilled the childhood dream of this madman. But then the full raid on the psyche begins, because Leo is asking, hit him again. Yes, seriously. One more time. Voluntarily. To make sure that everything happened for real. Our guy stares at him for a few seconds, and he understands a terrible thing. This was not just a talented magician. In front of him is a magic addict. Hit me again. No. Please. No. Just one more time. You could die. But it's beautiful. Bro is literally trying to subscribe to receive combat spells in person. In the end, Luca just knocks him out with a sleep spell. The most effective way to argue with fanatics. Then he sits down next to her and looks at the ceiling. Mission accomplished. Leo took the bait completely. The system is practically counted. The future hero's most important ally is already on the hook. And the best part, he doesn't even know how much they're going to use him. Luca looks at Leo sleeping peacefully and smiles to himself. Because right now, this guy looks happier than he has in the last 10 years. And our hero is already making plans for his future. In short, Leo thinks he's finally found a friend. Lucas believes that he has finally found a very useful tool. The beginning of a wonderful friendship, or very high-quality exploitation of human resources. Leo wakes up in the morning. For a few seconds, he tries to figure out if yesterday's fight was a dream. Then he sees Lucas, and he understands. No, everything is real. The magic was real. The duel was real. No. So the rumors about Pleroma are a lie. That's a lie. Can you use magic? I can. And all these years he could? He could. Leo's face grows darker with each answer, because the picture adds up to one huge word: deception. Someone was methodically ruining Lucas's life. For years. And finally the main question sounds. Then why? Why did you live like this? Why was he patient? Why did you let this happen? Why was he hiding his power? Why was he silent? And that's where our guy gets it. The moment has come. He leans closer, looks straight into Leo's eyes, and he utters a phrase that will completely turn the whole story around. Then promise me one thing. Which one? Don't tell anyone. For me, it's a matter of life and death. It's at this point that Leo finally stops being just a classmate, because now they're going to let him in on a secret that will destroy the original plot of the novel, which means history is officially starting to go off the rails. Our guy is finally showing his cards, more precisely, part of the maps, because if you tell the whole truth at once, Leo will either go crazy or try to stage a coup d'etat today. That's why Luke starts with the main thing. First, promise me you won't tell anyone. Leo looks at him as if he's about to hear a confession of belonging to the Pleroma, but after a short pause, he nods anyway, and even adds, I swear by God. Our guy just sighs. Bro is about to tell a family drama, and this one has already activated the divine contract. After that, Luca gets to the point. I was born with the most powerful magic in my family, and my brother wants to become the next head of the family. There is silence for a few seconds, and then Leo's face slowly begins to change, because he's not an idiot. He doesn't need to explain further. In the world of magicians, the strongest inherits power. If the younger brother is stronger than the older one, then the younger brother becomes a problem. A very big problem. And suddenly the whole story comes together. Wait a minute. Yes. You can't use magic because of your brother? Exactly. Leo is still trying to find an excuse. But he wasn't going to kill you, was he? And then Luca just takes out a bottle. That's the one. Medicine. Poison. Slow execution in a beautiful package. Leo takes the bottle and examines the contents carefully. The glowing liquid looks suspicious even without the magical formation. And for a person from a family of doctors, the picture becomes quite unpleasant. What is it anyway? The medicine that my brother sends me every month. After it, my core is blocked, and trying to use magic turns into torture. Leo's face gets paler with each new sentence, because now he begins to understand the scale of what is happening. This is no longer a family conflict, not envy, not a struggle for inheritance. This is a 10-year murder attempt. And then Leo asks a question that runs through the mind of any normal person. Why didn't you just stop drinking it? Our guy just grins, because the answer is even worse. When Luca was a child and refused to take medicine one day, he lost consciousness. He woke up after his brother told him the story of the supposedly killed wolf, and then the punishments began. Hunger, isolation, locked rooms, and not only on my brother's orders. My father also participated. And that's where Leo finally breaks down, because up to this point, he was still trying to find a rational explanation. Now there are no more explanations. There is only madness. The worst comes later. When they start remembering the rumors, a vampire, the cannibal, the Pleroma, the cult, blood rituals, all the accusations that Luca had been living with for years. And suddenly a question arises. What if your brother did it too? Most likely, at this point, Leo literally grabs his head, because his whole world is starting to fall apart. He hated Lucas, condemned him. He looked down on me. And now it turns out that Luca has been a victim for most of his life. Moreover, the victim of such a cruel scheme that it even sounds implausible. Leo's first reaction is, we need to inform the investigators. That's why Luca wanted to talk to him in advance. Because a good person always wants to act right away. But good people often forget one thing. Villains also know how to prepare. Therefore, the onion quickly cools his ardor. There is almost no evidence my brother must have prepared backup options. Any hasty action can end in disaster. Fortunately, it takes Leo a couple of seconds to figure it out for himself. Another advantage of having brains. After that, the conversation suddenly turns in another direction. Leo begins to remember all your bullying, all the barbs, all the times when he pointedly despised Lucas. And gradually his face turns red, out of shame, because suddenly it turns out that for years he had been putting pressure on a man who was already on edge. Our guy is quietly watching this process. Eventually, Leo lowers his head, and for the first time, he truly apologizes. Not for show, not for the sake of feeling better, but sincerely, for everything. For last year, for contempt, for the fight yesterday, for judging someone else's life without knowing anything. And that's where Luke responds unexpectedly. I can't forgive you. Leo flinches, but Luke continues. Because it's not my decision. And then it gets a little sad, because the real Luke is still the person who has lived these years. If anyone has to decide on forgiveness, it's him. Our guy is just a temporary tenant in this story. After that, the atmosphere becomes too heavy, so Luke decides to change the subject. And he remembers yesterday's fight. More precisely, one very interesting detail. By the way, you started practicing magic because of me, didn't you? Silence. An even longer silence. Leo turns pale abruptly, and then he blushes, and then it turns pale again, because he understands. He blurted out his main secret yesterday, the same secret that I've been hiding for 10 years. It turns out that it was Lucas's magic that inspired him to become a magician. Not the parents, not teachers, not an academy. Lucas. And so much so that Leo remembered his name years later, and now he looks like a man who's been caught reading a romance novel. It's not because of you. Yeah, because of your magic. Of course. I didn't even remember your face. Of course. The more he makes excuses, the funnier the situation becomes. Our guy can barely contain his laughter, but it's time to get back to business. Luke asks for two things. First, get a certain medicine, the one that will help you deal with the consequences of poisoning. Leo agrees right away, no questions asked. Without a doubt, just takes the list, and he nods. Second, much more interesting, train with me every day. For a second, Leo's face literally lights up with happiness. The real thing, clean, sincere. Then he remembers that he's supposed to look serious. But it's too late. Our guy saw everything. It turns out that the offer of daily workouts has about the same effect on Leo as the promise of a new bike for a child. He even tries to justify himself. Like, there just wasn't a suitable partner. Sure, we believe it. Absolutely. In the end, Leo agrees. And at the same moment, the system finally gives voice. Ding, congratulations. Task, make Leonard Wittelsbach your ally. Done. Chapter 2 is completed. The next chapter is confirmed. Our guy opens the status, and for the first time in a long time, he lets himself relax, because the foundation has finally been laid. The future hero's most important ally is now on his side, which means history has just completely gone off the rails. Our guy is finally starting to use the main cheat of any hitman, not by magic, not by the system, not knowledge of the future, and the statistics. Because after completing the task, the first thing he does is open the status, and then the fun begins. First, Luca looks at his stats, and immediately notices the changes. Mental strength, -10 to -9. Luck, -9,985 to -8,985. Health, he's grown up too, a little bit, but it has grown. Our guy stares at the numbers for a few seconds in silence. Then he understands. Wait a minute, is it because of a friend? It turns out yes. All of these stats literally grew just because he had his first real ally. And that thought makes me feel a little sad, because the system has just officially confirmed one thing. Over the years, Luca has been so lonely that friendship has turned out to be a full-fledged buff. But then it gets even more interesting. Luca opens the Dawn 777 window. That's the one. Which shows the probability of avoiding a bad ending, and a pleasant surprise awaits him there. The opportunity to change fate. 0, 3% to 5, 3%, 5%, 1 person, 1 ally, 5%. It turns out that Leo is literally a walking insurance policy against death. Our guy is smiling contentedly, because it means only one thing. He made the right bet. After that, Luca decides to look at the characteristics of Leo himself, and then he is morally destroyed by numbers. Health, +7, 5, Psyche, +9, Magic, +7, Skill, +8.5, Luck, +9.5. Our guy is watching. Then he looks again, then again, and he comes to a conclusion. It's not a person. It's a walking set of legendary stats. Even many professors look poor next to this monster. It becomes especially painful after the comparison. Lucas's health is in the red. The psyche is in the red. Luck is in the red. The title of the biggest fool of the empire. Leo's. Almost everywhere there are 9s. The monster's talent. The luck of the beloved of the gods. The injustice of the world is officially confirmed by the system. Don't come near me in public. What? If you suddenly start communicating with me normally, everyone will get suspicious. And Leo unexpectedly agrees. No arguments. because after yesterday's conversation he finally started using his head. Then the training arc begins, and as tough as possible. Each God's day, Leo drags Lucas to practice, and after a week the results become noticeable. The control of magic is growing at a furious pace, so fast that even Leo himself is starting to wonder. And at the end of the 7th day he gives the best compliment of his life. Great. Now at least you won't accidentally kill civilians. Thank you. Very inspiring praise. But seriously, Lucas' problem has always been beyond strength. He has just too much power. The problem is control. Imagine a man who was given a nuclear button instead of a lighter. That's about what his magic looks like. Therefore, every activity now literally saves others. And Lucas himself too. Because sooner or later you will have to face your brother, and such wars are not won on talent alone. A week later there is another piece of good news. The medicine is almost ready. That's the one, which will help restore the kernel. However, there is a problem. There are still 4 days left to wait. But these are small things. The plan is working. My brother is silent. There are no suspicions. The school calmed down. Everything is going perfectly. And that's why fate decides to remind you that it exists. Returning to the dorm in the evening via a teleportation artifact, Lucas suddenly feels something strange. It's very strange. The core. His magic core. It's shaking. It's like he's losing his stability. It's like it's literally falling apart from the inside. Our guy immediately looks gloomy, because he understands. 10 years of poisoning do not pass without a trace. Even if you stop taking the medicine, even if you start training, even if everything goes according to plan, the body has already suffered too much damage. And then the financial arc begins. The scariest arch of any student. Money. Luca opens a bank statement, and he sees a huge amount. The father continues to transfer money. There's only one problem. You can't use them. Generally. Because my brother is watching. If Luca, who hasn't bought much for a year, suddenly withdraws a large sum, the alarm will go off instantly. Therefore, an unpleasant conclusion arises. You need to earn by yourself. And then the novel's knowledge turns back into a cheat code. Luca takes out old newspapers. He starts flipping through the pages, and finally finds the right article. The increase in attacks by magical beasts. At first glance, this is common news. But for a person who has read the novel, it is a goldmine. Because right now, the government is starting to pay money for the destruction of monsters. And he does it as stupidly as possible. It's so stupid that the main character in the original literally got permission to hunt using forged documents. In 10 seconds. Without identity verification. Without registration. No questions asked. Back then, our guy, being a reader, laughed at the idiocy of officials. Now he looks at it in a completely different way. That's great. Corruption has never looked so useful. The next day, Luca tells Leo the plan, and he immediately gets involved in the work. He sits right on the floor of the training room. He takes out the paper, a pen. He starts calculating something, because when it comes to magic or preparing for battle, this person becomes dangerously effective. Good. What's the budget? I don't know yet. What do you mean? There is no money. But they are there. There is. Then why not? Because you can't use them. Leo freezes. Our guy starts to smile. Because explaining the financial situation of the heir to the richest family is sometimes more difficult than telling about a 10-year poisoning. And it is at this moment that Luca lays out a thick stack of documents on the table. Then he says seriously, listen carefully. I have a plan. And considering that all the previous plans of this psycho have already ruined the plot of the novel, you can start worrying in advance. Our guy is finally moving on to the next stage of the plan. Earn money. And as usual, he does it in the most suspicious way possible. Luca is laying out papers right in the middle of the training room, with the look of a man who is about to present a pyramid scheme. Leo looks at him first, then he looked at the papers, then back at him, and he gives the most honest comment of the day. It doesn't look possible at all. Our guy just smiles, because he knows one important thing. In this world, the most profitable schemes usually start with the words, "That's impossible." But before discussing the plan, Leo suddenly remembers another problem. Do you even realize that you are known all over the empire? I understand. No, you don't understand. And then the scolding begins. It turns out that for others, Luca is now behaving like a man who has been furniture for 10 years, and then suddenly started talking. It's not so noticeable at school yet. Everyone is used to his existence, but outside of the academy, people will quickly understand. Something has changed. It has changed a lot. Luca listens to this calmly, and he answers, "That's why I've already prepared." After that, he begins to explain the earnings scheme, attacks by magical beasts, rewards for destroying them, corrupt officials, a leaky registration system, fake identity. In general, the standard set of a successful entrepreneur. Leo is listening to, and then he asks the main question. Let's say, how are you going to hide your eyes? And that's where the really important problem begins. Because the bow can hide the face, hide the name, hide the voice. But his eyes know literally everything. Pink irises, a signature feature of the pleroma, in fact, a personal passport on the face. But it turns out that our guy has prepared for this too. However, the method raises questions, a lot of questions. And they all start with the words, "Why do you even know about such trash?" The next day, Luca drinks a special potion, and after a while his eyes change color. The pink disappears, Dark blue appears in its place, the most common color, so ordinary that no one will even pay attention. Leo looks at the result, then at Lucas. Then look at the result again, and he asks a logical question. How do you even know about this potion? Our guy instantly activates the most ancient hitman technique. I studied. All. End of explanation. Leo tries to dig further. Where did you study? I studied. Who taught you? I studied. How do you know about the side effects? I studied. In the end, Leo gives up, because it is extremely difficult to argue with a person who knows the future. After that, he suddenly puts forward his own condition. I'll help with the artifacts. Good. But I'm going with you. What? Are you serious? It turns out that Leo doesn't trust Lucas's survival skills at all, and the reason is quite simple. It's not the monsters I'm afraid of. I'm afraid for the forest. According to Leo, the problem is not whether Luca can kill the beast. The problem is whether there will be anything around after that, because our guy's talent is so absurd that it sometimes poses an environmental threat. And to be honest, that sounds fair enough. As a result, the operation begins the next day. Luca turns into the most suspicious person in the world. A black raincoat, the black hat, the black mask, black clothes. If there was a sign nearby, definitely not a criminal, the situation would look less suspicious. Leo looks at this outfit, and he sighs wearily. You look like a thief. Do you think I like it? No. Then don't complain. I'm going to complain anyway. True friendship begins that way. According to legend, Luca is now Leo's servant, a traveler from the papal state, a man with no name, without a story, no questions asked. The main rule, talk less, because the more Luca talks, the more problems there are. After a while, they reach the local office of the security bureau, and then something begins that no one expected. The building looks terrible. It's not too bad. It's not old, not running. Namely, it's terrible. It was as if he had been gambled away twice. Leo looks at the structure, then he checks the address. Then he looks back at the building. Are we sure we're there? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. It looks like a barn, so we're here. Then it gets even better. They're knocking. There was no reaction. They knock harder. A small window opens. An extremely displeased face looks out of it. What do you want? We came to work. Bang. The window closes. Leo freezes. Completely. Because for the first time in his life, he was literally sent through the door. After a few seconds, the door opens again. But now the man looks like he's seen angels. I'm sorry. Sorry. Come on in. It turns out that there are almost no people who want to work here. Therefore, any volunteer automatically becomes a national treasure. The funniest part starts later, when the manager offers them a weapon. Swords, spears, axes, anything. To which Leo calmly takes out his wand. We're magicians. The manager turns pale. Because it turns out one amazing thing. Real magicians never came here. Generally. Not once. For all the time. Only locals. Only mercenaries. Only people who need money. In fact, the state program was based on the honest word and desperation of the peasants. Leo is facing reality outside the world of nobles for the first time, and it looks like he suffered critical damage to his psyche. He even tries to ask further questions, but the manager immediately shuts down, because there's a noble standing in front of him. And such things are usually not told to nobles, especially if you want to move on with your life. As a result, Luca quickly changes the subject, gets permission, gets a pass through the barrier, and they finally go hunting. A real hunt. They walk through the forest for a while. Everything is calm, suspiciously calm, and suddenly Luca stops, sharply, without warning. Wait, what? Blood. Where? I can smell blood. Leo doesn't feel anything, generally, but he already knows one thing. If Luke tells you to stop, it's better to stop. Therefore, he immediately raises the barrier, and he follows. After a few minutes, they find the source of the smell. And that's where it gets nasty. It's very disgusting. Purple rats? Dozens. Hundreds. The mutated ones. Rotting ones. They're crazy. They are literally eating each other alive. Blood, pus, meat. The smell is such that even Leo starts to turn green. Damn it. Yes. Is this a nest? It looks like it. I'm going to feel sick. Hold on. Leo covers his nose. He's trying not to puke. He's trying to maintain his dignity. It doesn't work out very well, but there is no time to rest anymore. Because the rats notice the guests. Red dots start flashing in the dark. 1, 5, 10, 20. Too much, too close, and they're all looking at just two people. Leo slowly transforms the wand into a sword. Luca pulls out his own. And both of them understand one thing at the same time. The first hunt has begun. Which means someone will regret very much today that they decided to attack them. In short, our two hunters go on their first sweep, and it starts as easily as possible. Man-eating rats, which the locals consider a serious problem, turn out to be literally training dummies for Luca and Leo. These creatures rush at them in packs, squeak, try to bite, but everything ends the same way. Bang, the rat is dead. Bang, one more. Half an hour later, the entire forest is already littered with corpses. Leo looks at what is happening and can't believe it. Do they really fall with one blow? Bro, you're a student at an elite academy. For you, these rats are about like a first-level mob for a character of the 100th. Now the main problem is not even the fight. The main problem is collecting body bags. As they stack the loot, Leo suddenly begins to philosophize. They say, I feel sorry for these creatures. They were once ordinary animals. Then they got infected with magic. Then they went crazy. And now they have to be killed. Luca listens to this and just nods, because he knows things that Leo doesn't. In the future, it's this guy who will create a cure for similar monsters. In fact, the future medical genius is standing in front of him right now and doesn't even know it yet. So Luca just slaps him on the shoulder and says, well, make the medicine yourself. Leo looks at him like he's crazy. Are you serious? Our guy just grins, because he knows the future better than Leo himself. Returning to the hunter's office, they unload the bag. The manager opens it. He looks inside. He's watching it in, and it freezes, because there are so many rats inside, as if these two had staged a local genocide of the entire species. This is literally the first time a man sees such prey. According to his calculations, they almost completely wiped out the local population, for which they get about 50,000 won. And then the funniest part begins. Leo, who grew up in a rich family all his life, looks at money and is like, not bad, we earned a monthly allowance in an hour. And Luke looks at him in much the same way as one looks at a child who has learned the price of bread for the first time. The rich boy is only now beginning to understand the concept of earnings. After that, they're going to leave. But then Luca smells blood again, and not just blood, other blood. Clean. Fresh. Not the nasty mixture of pus and infection that used to be. Leo doesn't notice anything. Our guy is already turning into some kind of high-speed witcher. He can smell blood from a kilometer away. He senses danger. He senses problems. And unfortunately, problems can sense it too. Suddenly something flies out of the bushes right at them. Bang! Luca automatically sets up a barrier. Leo is already preparing for the fight. But it turns out, it's a rabbit. Just a scared rabbit. Bro literally staged a horror scene for the rabbit. However, this is where Luca begins to tense up. Because animals don't behave that way. The rabbit rushes everywhere. There is blood in the forest. The tracks are strange. And intuition starts screaming like a siren. He offers to leave. Leo immediately agrees, which is already a bad sign. Even if this fight fan wants to leave, it smells fried. And then they find the tracks. Wolves. Large. Very big ones. A second later, a howl echoes through the forest. The kind of howl that makes any normal person start writing a will. Luca and Leo understand instantly. They are no longer hunters. They're a potential dinner. And just a second later, something flies out of the darkness. Growl. Bam. The creature crashes into Luke's barrier, and so much so that the protection cracks. And then Luca understands. This is no longer an ordinary beast. Not even close. To examine the enemy, he launches a flash of light. And this is where the real Resident Evil begins. A wolf stands in front of them. But not exactly a wolf. He has a huge goat horn. Someone else's feet. Other people's body parts. The whole body feels like it was put together by a drunken alchemist at 3 in the morning. Leo looks at this wonder of nature, and literally freezes. This, Luca finishes for him. A chimera. And that's where it really doesn't get funny, because chimeras don't appear on their own. Someone created them. Someone deliberately mixed up the animals. Someone was conducting experiments. But there is no time to think. The monster charges again. Leo instantly uses the magic of plants. The roots grab the creature. Luca finishes from above. A huge tree falls right on the monster's head. Boom. The wolf turns into a rug. The fight is over. But the problems are just beginning. As they inspect the carcass, Luca notices an important detail. Traces. The same footprints they had seen before. They don't match. At all. If it's a wolf, then why were there traces of another animal before? Leo doesn't understand at first. Then he gets it. And his face looks like he saw the price of tuition after the discount. Because the answer is obvious. It was a pack. An ordinary wolf pack. Only instead of wolves, there are chimeras running around in it. Luca speaks calmly. If we're lucky, there are fewer than 10 of them. And after the word lucky, the worst usually begins. Because at that moment, new red eyes start to light up around the forest. 1, 2, 3, 4, more. A growl comes from the darkness, from all sides. And our guys understand one simple thing. If they ran away now, the pack would follow them straight to the humans. That leaves only one option. Luca creates a huge red spear in his hand. He looks into the darkness. He looks at the approaching eyes. And he speaks calmly. Well then, so we'll have to kill them all, before dawn. And that's how an ordinary rat hunt suddenly turns into the beginning of a real boss raid. Bro, this is where the real business begins. Luke's arc, but instead of opening a coffee shop, our guy decides to farm money on monsters. After a week of training with Leo, Luca no longer looks like a man who might accidentally blow up half the neighborhood while trying to light a candle. The skill has grown, the control of magic has become much better, and most importantly, he is finally starting to make real plans against his brother. And then our guy opens the newspaper, and he sees interesting news. The number of magical beast attacks increased dramatically, and the Bureau of Magical Security is so competent that it decided, well, can someone figure it out for themselves? That is, the government structure literally outsources the killing of monsters to random people. The main character of the novel had already used this hole in the system, and Luca immediately understands. Oh, free money. He comes to Leo and lays out his plan. Leo reads the papers. He looks at Luca. He looks at the papers again, and gives out. It sounds like complete nonsense. Our guy just smiles. Because he knows things that Leo doesn't. Exactly. The local security agency operates at about the level of the village barn. Leo immediately raises the main question. Do you even realize that half of the empire knows you? And it's real. Luca is not some kind of no-name. He's literally a local meme. Everyone knows the pink eyes of the Pleroma family. Everyone knows his face. Even if he wears a mask, anyone will see the iris and immediately say, "Oh look, it's that empire's biggest fool." But Luca has already thought it all out. That's where Leo comes in. He's making a special potion. The stuff is so murky that even the old folks of the Wittelsbach family rarely use it. A side effect? It changes the color of magic in eyes. In short, a temporary cheat code to hide your identity. After the potion, Luca's pink eyes turn dark blue. It's almost impossible to recognize him now. Bro literally activated the mode, a secret identity from a cheap superhero movie. After that, Leo suddenly asks to take him with him. The reason? Very noble. At least officially. I don't trust your skills. Actually, this guy just wants to take a closer look at Luke's magic. A fanatic of magic remains a fanatic of magic. The next day, they arrive at the local branch of the agency. And then the circus begins. The building looks like it was forgotten to be demolished 20 years ago. The main character of the novel called this place Ruins. Luca now understands why. They're knocking. A window opens. The most displeased face looks out of it. "What do you want?" "We came for cleaning." Bang. The window closes. Leo stands there in complete shock. The guy literally got a door in his face. A second later, the door opens again, and the same guy is already smiling as if he saw relatives. It turns out that there are about as many people who want to hunt animals as there are those who want to voluntarily jump into a volcano. Therefore, any client is greeted as a savior. Then it turns out an even more fun thing. The local branch hardly checks documents at all. Generally. No way. Luca and Roman's reader were once equally blown away by this level of security. Because anyone can literally come and say, "I'm a magician," and they'll believe him. When the manager finds out that there are real magicians in front of him, the man almost falls to his knees. Because magicians have hardly come here all the time. All the previous hunters were ordinary people. Yes, ordinary people. Who went to kill magical beasts? Because the government has decided to save the budget. The bureaucracy of the moment simply reaches the level of the final boss. After getting a pass through the barrier, Luca and Leo go into the forest. At first, everything goes smoothly, and then Luca stops abruptly. Wait, he can smell blood. Leo doesn't notice anything, but our guy already understands. Something's wrong. They're moving on, and they find a real nightmare. There are rats everywhere, but not really rats anymore. Some kind of purple mutants covered in pus and blood. They are literally eating each other alive. A horror-level picture. Even Leo is starting to turn pale, and this guy usually only thinks about magic, so the situation is really disgusting. They understand the main thing. They are not natural animals. Someone changed them on purpose. Someone is creating chimeras. And this is a completely different level of problems. And as if that wasn't enough, new eyes begin to appear out of the darkness. Red. Lots of red eyes. A lot of red eyes. Our guys understand. They had just found more than just monsters. They found the pack. And this pack has already decided that tonight's dinner is Luca and Leo. In short, the money farm suddenly turns into a real raid boss arc. In short, our guy Lucas is calmly walking through the school and suddenly hears students discussing some mysterious blue-eyed hunter behind the stairs. And then it hits him. Rumors have already spread throughout the academy faster than spoilers for the anime finale. It turns out that everyone is discussing him and Leo after their hunting trip. Some people build conspiracy theories. Others are sure that Leo's mysterious companion is some kind of hidden aristocrat. Still others generally believe that this is a foreign magician from the Papal State, under a false name. And our guy just stands on the sidelines and thinks, yes, you can't even imagine how much worse it is. It's especially funny that he signed up with his real last name. Just not aristocratic. Bro literally hid in full view of everyone. The real 007 agent of the budget version. By lunchtime, the situation becomes even more fun. Now students are running all over the academy and yelling, "The blue-eyed hunter goes hunting again tomorrow." Lucas is already choking on air, because this is the first time he hears this new title. The blue-eyed hunter. Bro opened the status window to check if it was a hallucination. And what do you think? The title has really changed. Now instead of the previous shame, there is something like, the hunter? That is, the system is literally like this. Do people call you that? Well, here's a new title. Lucas looks at it and understands. Great, now I'm a legend of urban mythology. But if Lucas was just given a weird nickname, then Leo is going through real hell right now. He was literally surrounded by journalists. 5 newspapers, 3 interview requests, hundreds of questions. The kid just wanted to hunt monsters. As a result, he became a local celebrity. When they meet at the training ground in the evening, Leo looks like he's not 17 years old, but 57. Lucas asks, "Is everything okay?" Leo immediately, "No." And he answers with such a face as if he had just paid off the mortgage for 3 locks. But then the most useful part begins. Leo gives him a long-awaited package. Artifacts. And not some pretentious legendary relics. No, the most ordinary watch and chain. It looks so boring that no one will even pay attention. But there's a real cheat code hidden inside. The watch is supposed to hide Lucas's magical aura, and the chain will stabilize its crumbling core. In fact, it's like putting an SSD in an ancient computer. The outside is the same junk. There is a completely different level of work inside. Lucas puts on his watch, uses magic, and he immediately feels the difference. Earlier it was as if he was driving along a dead rural road after a bombing. Now it's at least a normal asphalt. Leo is already glowing with happiness, like a child who has been given a new toy. See? It's working. And then Lucas opens the status, and almost drops his jaw to the floor. Skill, plus 1.015 to plus 4.0154. Bro gained plus 3 skills in 1 hour. This is literally a legendary RPG outfit, but the real shock comes after the chain. At first it seems that nothing has happened, and then his core suddenly becomes light, free, without constant pain, no pressure, without feeling like there's a brick stuck inside my chest. Lucas doesn't even know how he feels, because for the first time in 10 years, his core is working almost normally. He removes the artifact, and the pain immediately returns. He puts it back on, and it gets easy again. And then a terrible thought comes to him. All this time, he didn't even realize how damaged he was. It's like a man who has been breathing through a straw all his life, and then took a deep breath for the first time. The status doesn't lag behind either. Health, minus 3.5 to minus 0.5, plus 3 more points. Bro is literally recovering before our eyes. Now he no longer looks like a character who will die from a violent sneeze. After that, Leo goes to rest, because the journalist destroyed him morally more than any monsters. And Lucas stays to train. 3 hours in a row, chasing magic. It is testing a new condition, enjoying life. In short, the man finally got a normal gaming account instead of a broken starting character. But then the classic novel setting begins. He returns to the dormitory at night, tired, pleased, happy, and then he notices a note under the door, opens it, is reading. It says, "I know everything." This already sounds like the beginning of horror. He turns the sheet over. It's even better there. Get out of the dorm immediately. It gets really tense for a second, because there are many options. A brother? A cult? The pleroma? Did someone reveal his identity? But Lucas quickly turns on his brain, and he understands. If they really had proof, they would have leaked it to the newspapers by now. So it's just an attempt to lure him out. That's why our guy goes out quietly. And almost immediately, he is intercepted by some freshmen, scared as if he was being forced to carry a message to the Demon King himself. The guy leads Lucas through half of the academy grounds, to the abandoned buildings, where either fights or plot issues usually start. Most often, both at the same time. Several familiar faces are already waiting for him there. Typical academic jackals. Not tops. Not geniuses. Not monsters like Leo. Namely, the kind of people who exist only to ruin others' lives. Those same NPCs are the school bullies. And then everything becomes clear. There is no conspiracy, no investigation, no hunting for the hunter. These clowns just decided to check if Lucas was still the same patient. One of them comes up and starts pushing. "You've changed. I've become too confident. I forgot my place." The other one laughs. The third agrees. The fourth one is generally trying to look scary. In short, a losers club meeting. Lucas listens to them and suddenly relaxes, because he understands. It's not a threat, it's garbage. They don't know anything at all. Not about hunting, not about the pleroma, not about his plans. They just want to assert themselves. And that's when our guy finally calms down. Because instead of a global crisis, all he got was school bullying. After monsters, cults, and a psychopathic brother, this is about the difficulty level of a training mission. And then one of the geniuses of the local spill finally gives out the reason for the call. "Give me the jacket." Bro. They actually arranged a secret meeting in the middle of the night in order to wring his jacket. The threat level instantly drops from secret organization to gangsters at the door. In short, our guy is reaching a new level of trouble. These clowns demand to give back the jacket, and Luca understands one thing. If the uniform is torn or ruined, the family will know immediately. And these are unnecessary questions. But there is a nuance here. The Ascanian family does not perceive him as a full-fledged family member at all. The Empire literally divides the concepts of Ascanian and Lucas. While the real heir appears somewhere on the horizon, everyone bows. And for most people, Luca is just a strange guy with a last name. Therefore, our hero looks at the situation as calmly as possible. Type, "Would you like a jacket? Take it away." And just throws it on the ground. And these geniuses begin to happily trample on the form with their feet. Bro, they're really acting like villains from a third-grade high school drama. One jumps on the jacket, others laugh. The third one is encouraging. Lucas stands and looks at it with such a face, as if he was not in a magic academy, but in a kindergarten for the especially gifted. And then a terrible thought comes to him. These types are so dumb that they don't even understand the consequences of their actions. They literally mock a man from a great family, and are sure that nothing will happen to them. Intelligence is about the level of decorative bricks. Then one of the heroes of the local circus grabs Luca by the collar. And that's where the fun begins. The kid was expecting to see old Luke, the downtrodden guy who turns pale from any pressure. But instead he gets a completely calm look. Our hero leans closer and says, "What? Will you see my tears and feel like a winner?" It's a direct blow to self-esteem. The chalice system literally freezes, and then his ego finally breaks down. Then you'll never win. Oh, that's psychological damage. The guy immediately reaches for the wand. And instead of words, It triggers magic. Boom. Luca flies into the wall. School diplomacy is over. The academic version of the UFC has begun. The others are even a little tense. Type, hey, we actually wanted to do everything quietly, but the main genius has already caught the main character's syndrome and decided to show his strength. He comes closer and begins to moralize. And then there's a moment that almost made me fall out. This guy starts telling Luke that he should take an example with Leo and the blue-eyed hunter. That is, literally from Lucas himself under the mask. Bro is now explaining to Luca why he needs to become like Lucas. This is a level of comedy that cannot be invented on purpose. Lucas stands and listens to his own motivational speech from the side. Learn from the blue-eyed hunter. He benefits the society. Be like him. Our guy is barely able to keep from laughing at this moment. This is literally a meme situation where Superman is told how cool Clark Kent is. But then it doesn't get funny anymore. These idiots begin to explain that they really want to help Luke. Yeah, when a school bully says the word help, it's usually time to run. 3 of them grab his arms. Luca is already thinking about knocking everyone out with magic right now, but he's still holding out. And so the gang leader takes a lump out of his bag. At first, it's not clear what it is. Then it becomes clear. A live rat. And then the level of abomination breaks through the ceiling. It turns out that it was these clowns who once spread the rumor that Luca eats rats for the sake of magic. And now we decided to arrange a check. They literally stick an animal in his face and say, "Come on, eat up, I'm serious." They actually brought a live rat to force a man to eat it. At this point, it becomes clear that their level of mental development has finally left the chat. Luca looks at them like they're psychiatric patients, and they continue. We just want to help. Maybe you can use magic after that. Maybe it will work? Bro, this is not bullying anymore. It's some kind of dark ritual of the village shamans. They begin to unclench his jaw. The rat is brought directly to the mouth. The situation is getting so ugly that even Luke is seriously considering setting up a local Armageddon. And that's when it all comes to the limit. Bang! A bright red flash flashes. A real flashback from Call of Duty. Everyone starts yelling. Some fall to the ground, others are clutching at their eyes. The third one doesn't understand what's going on at all. And Luca finally breaks free. He's breathing heavily. It rises. And then for the first time in the whole conversation, he looks really angry. Very angry. He picks up a handful of dirt and stones from the ground. Then he grabs the main freak by the collar. And now the roles are changing. A few seconds ago, these guys felt like hunters. And now they're starting to realize that for some reason, the prey is looking at them like the boss of the final raid. Lucas squeezes his jaw so hard that he almost howls. And he speaks calmly. Raise your head. The guy starts to panic. He looks at the dirt in Lucas's hand. He doesn't understand what's going on at all. And our hero keeps pushing. Open your mouth. And then a terrible thought slowly begins to reach the whole company. It seems they just pissed off the wrong person. In short, Bro finally turns on the stop putting up with this circus mode. And the situation is unfolding as much as possible, not where these geniuses expected. Our guy holds one of the bullies by the scruff of the neck and gives out such a philosophy that even a bitch would think. Since we all came from the mud and will go to the mud, maybe we should start eating dirt and becoming people? A person instantly ceases to feel like the alpha of the neighborhood. The kid jerks, kicks, tries to escape, but then one of his friends triggers magic. Bang! Lucas calmly blocks the attack, as if it's not magic, but a mosquito that flew into the room. And then the scariest thing of the evening begins to sink in. Wait, can you use magic? This is where the entire company begins its collective blue screen. All their lives they considered Lucas a useless statistician, and now this guy is standing in the middle of their company and chanting spells like the hero of the final arc. A real fight begins. 3 of them pour magic on him at the same time. The only problem is that their attacks work about as effectively as a water pistol against a tank. Lucas puts up a barrier, reflects spells, counterattacks, and he literally starts taking these guys apart for spare parts. One flies back. The second one falls face first into the mud. The third is bound by magic. Moreover, Lucas himself does not look angry. He looks annoyed. Type, are you seriously that weak? And it turns out to be much more offensive for them than any blows. One of the students is already sweating like before an exam, because he finally gets it. Lucas doesn't just know how to use magic. He uses it much better than they do. And this guy's only been studying magic for a while. It turns out to be the most humiliating mathematics. They've been training for years. He's been training for a couple of weeks, and he still throws them on the ground. It's literally when you've been playing an MMO character all your life, and a newbie comes in and accidentally does more damage. Meanwhile, Lucas continues the educational process. One turns over with a kick. The other is pinned to the ground. The third one generally begins to turn in his friends faster than the witnesses during the interrogation. It's not me. He started it. Bro couldn't even stand the first episode. After that, Lucas gets to the main clown of the evening, the one who tried to make him eat a rat. She takes the wand from him. He looks at her and gives out, "It's not a bad thing. When there is no talent, you have to buy equipment." Chayla almost has a heart attack, because this is coming from a guy they've been calling useless for years. And then the real revenge begins. Lucas picks up a handful of dirt from the ground again, grabs the bully by the collar, and he speaks calmly, "Eat it." Everyone is hanging around. The kid looks at the dirt, at Lucas, back to the mud, and he understands that today karma has come for debts. He starts asking me to stop. He promises never to bully again. He's trying to negotiate. But Lucas is already in boss mode. No way. Then he finishes them off with the most terrifying argument. If they don't do what he says, he'll just tell the school everything that happened today. And then the panic begins. Because everyone understands. If the story about the attack on Lucas Ascanian comes up, the exception will arrive faster than the owl from Hogwarts. Especially if his father finds out. The guys have an emergency board meeting starting inside their heads. And after long calculations, the main culprit comes to the conclusion. Eating dirt is still more profitable than being excluded. Yes. The situation has come to this point. The man really opens his mouth, going to eat the earth. And then Lucas looks at what's happening and says, "Wait a minute, are you seriously going to eat this?" Everyone's brain freezes. Spit it out. It's disgusting. It turns out that our guy wasn't going to force him to eat dirt at all. He just showed how absurd their own proposal with the rat looked. That is, bro turned the perfect mirror. He made the man feel the idiocy of the situation himself, and it turned out so effectively that it already hurts to look at it. After that, the bully finally loses his temper. He swings, and he punches Lucas in the face with all his might. Blow. Lucas's head jerks to the side. Everything is blurring before my eyes. A bruise is guaranteed. But then the scariest thing happens. Lucas starts laughing. Don't get mad. Don't scream. Laugh. And that's where absolutely everyone gets scared. Because a normal person doesn't behave like that after a blow. And then one of the students lying down suddenly realizes the horror of the situation. Don't hit him. It's too late. Lucas calmly holds his head and smiles. Because now he has something that wasn't there before. Proof. Present. The visible. Reinforced concrete. Now it's not just a conflict anymore. Now it's an official attack. The student immediately turns pale. He tries to justify himself. This is a mistake. I didn't mean to. And then Lucas finishes him off with the last sentence. Thanks for this mistake. It is very convenient to have evidence. And at that moment the poor guy understands. He had just dug his own grave with his own hands. Our guy is sitting in front of 3 local bottling geniuses and just enjoying the moment. Seriously, the expression on their faces is so beautiful right now that it can be sold as a collector's item. It's been almost 2 hours since the start of the nighttime showdown. Lucas looks at his watch and realizes it's time to end the show. Bro calmly takes out his wand, points it directly at the forehead of one of the students, and activates the spell that he was cramming to the point where he was already sick of these words. Enter through the narrow gate. And then the real cleaning of the hard drive begins. At first, the student stupidly blinks his eyes, looks around, as if he had just left the skating rink after 10 hours without sleep, and then just turns off and falls face forward. Bam! The others immediately start yelling, "What are you doing?" But our guy is working on a no-nonsense system today. Another spell. Minus consciousness. Minus the memories. Minus the understanding of what is happening. In fact, Lucas is currently signing up for a free subscription to Amnesia. This magic erases everything related to its use. A red light? While. A wand? While. Magic? Never heard of it. However, there is a side effect. You can accidentally delete something else useful. So Lucas looks at these 3 and thinks, I hope I didn't make them any dumber. Although, to be honest, it was already difficult to worsen the situation there. After processing 3 brains at once, his head starts to split. Bro understands the simple truth. He urgently needs to improve his stats, because now he looks like a character who has invested all his points in intelligence and forgotten about endurance. It opens the status window and sees a pleasant surprise. The mental strength has grown, just half a point, but for a man who literally survives in hardcore mode, it's already a celebration. Lucas immediately starts making plans. Exams are a month away, and that's where the main problem comes in. He wants to pump magic. And the university is like this. No, my friend. First, history, literature, and other academic pain. But grades are also needed. High scores are a reputation. Reputation is an influence. Influence is an opportunity to twist others as you want. So Lucas decides to use the situation to his advantage, and he's already starting to come up with schemes. But here, a voice is heard from above. Impressive magic. Lucas immediately raises his head. There's a guy on the roof, and he stands so calmly, as if watching the new anime season from the best place in the cinema. Our guy immediately gets tense, because there was no one there before. This guy literally appeared out of nowhere as the final boss in the cutscene. Lucas is already reaching for his wand, but the stranger starts waving his arms. Wait, I'm coming down. Then he jumps off the roof, strengthening his legs with mana. And she lands so confidently, as if she does it every morning before breakfast. I'm Nark Farnese, an exchange student from the Papal State, and then Lucas gets a little surprised. Because he doesn't remember such a character in the original plot at all, or this guy was so unimportant, or the plot has already started to change the route, and this already sounds like the beginning of problems. The drug addict starts talking, and suddenly turns out to be as friendly as possible. So friendly that Lucas even opens a window of favor, and he sees +7. Our guy is watching again, then again, because the positive favorability for him now looks like a legendary item with a 0.001% chance of falling. What has he ever heard of me? And then the drug explains. It turns out that the rat that started the whole fight belongs to him. That is, Lucas has literally saved his pet now. That's why the guy is grateful. The drug addict picks up the animal, checks its pulse, and exhales. Then he takes out his wand. Lucas is already preparing for the unexpected, but instead of attacking, Narc also starts editing the memory of the students lying down. Bro is also a fan of mental tricks, and then Lucas finally understands. This guy is far from a simple statistician. Therefore, he opens his status, and he almost laughs, because the characteristics of the drug look like someone's cheating account. High health, high magic, high mental strength, the precognition trait, the perspicacity trait. In fact, he is facing a character who simultaneously reads the plot and spoilers, a real monster. And it is at this moment that the system message appears. Make the best choice. Lucas has a choice. Make this guy an ally, or keep your distance. But our guy doesn't even think for long. It's better to keep strong people around. It's easier to observe this way, because the most dangerous snake should be right in front of your eyes. He chooses a union. The system immediately counts the task, and the probability of survival increases by another 1%. 1%. It sounds ridiculous to an ordinary person. For Lucas, this is literally another day of living in a world that is constantly trying to kill him. After that, Narc finishes erasing the students' memories and asks, "Are you really going to leave it at that?" Lucas looks at the sleeping idiots, and he's smiling. No way. And then it becomes clear. Our guy's already up to something. Morning is coming. A trio of losers wakes up in a clearing. At first, they don't understand what's going on at all. Then they start remembering. Or rather, they're trying to, because the memory now resembles Swiss cheese after the explosion. One suddenly feels a salty taste in his mouth, and immediately begins to panic. What do I need? Have they fed the earth? Another remembers Lucas. The third remembers that he was lying on the ground. Then they start putting the puzzle together, and gradually the terrible truth dawns on them. They lost. We lost to a guy who officially can't even use magic. The atmosphere in the room is so heavy that it can crush concrete. They're trying to come up with excuses. They build theories. They discuss grades. They discuss the evidence. They discuss denunciations. In fact, an emergency meeting of the club, how not to get kicked out of the academy after the most shameful defeat in life, is currently taking place. And in the end, they decide to keep quiet, because no one remembers anything. So technically nothing happened. An ingenious plan. Simply magnificent, if it wasn't for one small but. The next day, they enter the classroom, and they immediately understand. They're dead. Not literally, for now. Because Lucas appears in the doorway, and he looks like he survived a meeting with a team of villains from some senin yesterday. His face is bruised, bandages, traces of beatings, a complete set of school violence victims. The trio immediately break out in a cold sweat, because yesterday, when they left, there was definitely no such thing, and now the evidence is literally walking around the classroom on two legs. One of them whispers, "We didn't hit him." The other is already mentally writing a will, and then the worst happens. Lucas leaves his bag, unfolding. He walks right up to them. He puts his hand on the shoulder of one of the guys, and he's smiling. Not just smiling, the same smile that usually starts the revenge arc in anime. And that's when the poor guy finally understands. The real problems are just beginning.